Hey Fred, how's it going?
Hey Anil, I'm good. And you?
Good, man. It's been a while, eh?
It has.
Good to be
Great to be
back in
back
touch
with
with
you.
you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. It's been a funny few weeks on the personal front. Moved out of my flat, gearing up into a new gig, working on a few things on the side. Had to give the podcast a bit of a gap in the last 2 weeks since our last chat. Um, feeling good, but I'll be honest, man. I've been in different headspaces, emotional states, I can say, in the last couple of weeks. So always good to chat with you on that front. How about you, man? How have your last couple of weeks been?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, but a lot of good stuff too. So I have a new job, first time in an operational role since getting
Congrats.
into coaching for most of the time over the past 2 years. So that's been interesting.
How's
And
that?
yeah, I was thinking a lot about happiness. It's one of these things that comes in and out, and so that's why I texted you about that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did because it's something that I think kind of has popped up on various moments when we've chatted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a topic that's kind of near and dear to me because like whenever when I have a conversation with my partner about, she's like, want to make each other happy, or somebody says, "Hey, are you happy?" or "How are you feeling?" Well, I'm happy. I always kind of like, ever since I read The Art of Happiness, I just have a completely different perspective on that word and like that feeling. So yeah, man, I'm kind of excited to chat a bit more about it.
Mm. Is that
Maybe,
the
go
book
ahead.
by the Dalai Lama?
Yes, sir. Yes, it is.
Okay, that's on my list. I actually even downloaded it, but I haven't gotten to it yet. And it was the one thing I thought this morning, like I can't believe we're having a chat about happiness, and I haven't read the Dalai Lama's book on happiness yet. And it's been recommended to me a number of times, and I'm about to read it. But maybe we have a follow up chat about that, or maybe you want to start there by telling me a little bit about what happiness is, because
Yeah,
it
no,
goes
I
into that.
well, I think what's gonna be kind of cool now is I'll probably end up quoting it or giving some examples from it, and after you listen to it, you'll either come back and go, "Yeah, you know I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what book you read. That's a different book than what I read or what I listened to or what messages I caught." So no, I think it'll be good. No, I read that book early part of last year, so actually just as we'd gone into lockdown, and it was an interesting time to read that book because it was actually, I think, one of the first few audibles I read. Um, and I've obviously heard about the Dalai Lama, know about him, but I never knew about his teachings on happiness.
Mm.
And the what I caught onto is the thesis of the book from my side is, happiness is a feeling, and feelings come and go. His, I think one of the main points he was saying is, look, it's all about a state of positivity or being in a positive state of mind, and things that we can do, should do, want to do in the moment that shift us into a positive state of mind. Because if we try to do things that make us happy, or insert the word feel happy, we, that happiness may pass and it might get replaced with sadness or anger or
Mm-hmm.
frustration. And so what do we do? And how have we grown from being little to where we have no perspective or clue on feelings, but we can shift from a positive to negative state by being laughing or crying, to where we are as adults now, and we've got more conscious thought, and we have an ability to go into a negative state, but then find a way back to being in a positive state. And so for
Mm-hmm.
me, I kind of have adopted that now. It's like, I want to feel happy, but it's what can I do to be in a positive state of mind, even when I'm angry or feeling frustrated, like I'm still in a positive state, or I'm taking steps to get me into a positive state.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's very interesting. And it seems that that is taking happiness as a desirable outcome,
Mm-hmm.
which I agree with. And even that seems to be controversial. So you want to do things to make yourself happy because the other side of that would be being unhappy. And
Exactly.
I don't know, it clearly seemed worse to me, right?
No, totally. I mean, you think about, I think about the movie Boiler Room, and one of the famous quotes from that movie, Ben Affleck's character is like, people that say money can't buy you happiness. Here's my Ferrari. People that, say money makes you miserable. They don't have any. And I'm almost kind of like, okay, so if money makes you happy, then why is it people who have a lot of money are typically always stressed out? or
Mm.
they're chasing the next dollar, or they're chasing the next pound. And, I don't see them as happy people. Obviously, they're able to afford nice things. And if those nice things make them feel happy, it can also make them feel sad. So it's almost like how we understand, like you said, happiness is an outcome. What are we doing
Mm-hmm.
moment to moment that gets us closer to that outcome of happiness, but we're able to sustain that state or feeling longer? Because if we're
Yeah,
happy or feeling happy, we're going to make others happy,
absolutely.
or it's
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
be hopefully contagious in a good sense.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I mean, of course, some rich people are happy, right? But there are also the stories, and this is one of the kind of archetypical stories that I come back to. Is someone says, I was working so much, and I thought the car and the house and the partying and the new girlfriends were going to make me happy. And then after 25 years, I realized that they weren't going to give me lasting happiness. And it's like, really? That took you 25 years to realize that one night stands and champagne and a very
Bottles and
polished
bottles.
car was not going to make you happy? That's sad in its whole own way. Um, and I think that should be clear, as you say. You do things that put you in a positive state, and so we are doing things to try to make ourselves happy, right? Because the other criticism, some people say, for example, you can't have happiness as a goal. And then the question is, well, then what are you going to have? Unhappiness or success or something else? And you're just going to hope that happiness comes along? Or this state of being happy or not happy is not important? Or there are also the t-shirts that say, I choose happiness, which I think is, it's nice, but it's also a bit too glib for me. You want to see that person when they're having a really rough day and say, like, so what about now? You choosing happiness now? And they would tell you to fuck off, right?
Exactly. No, I totally agree.
Um, and the other thing I thought about as you're saying that was, so we do choose happiness, or we try to get there in some way. And there's something about, like we talked before, about fake it till you make it. We've talked about being and becoming, like happiness and success,
Mhm.
and also being realistic.
Mhm.
So, not always just pretending that things are a certain way and putting a smile on, but actually looking and saying, well, what should I be doing differently? Maybe I'm bumping my head against the wall here and I need to change something. And if you come back to, if you exercise, if you eat well, if you take care of your mind, if you take care of your relationships, you can make other people happier and they can make you happier. And you have a job that you like. It's pretty much it, right?
Yeah, but this is where I love the word pedantic. This is where I get
Mm-hmm.
pedantic. So to make others happier, to make ourselves happy, again, I say it's a feeling, right? We feel
Mm-hmm.
happy.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone says, "Are you happy?" I'm happy. Well, or do you feel happy? Oh yeah, I feel happy. So it's
Mm.
like, for example, if I handed you a check for $10,000, you're gonna feel happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Initially, and then you might go, "Hang on a second. Now I feel a bit. Wait, why are
Mm.
you giving me $10,000? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
okay,
Mm-hmm.
what do I have to do now to earn this?" Suddenly you've gone from a feeling of happy to a feeling of, anxiety, concern, stress. And I think that's the reason why I always go back to, okay, so now I have to, like, you have to get to a positive state of mind. Like, oh, he's given me a check for $10,000. Okay. So now I need to get information in order to shift back to a positive state, as opposed to in a negative state of anxiety and feeling
Mm-hmm.
negative, feeling anxious, to feeling happy. So I find that I find that something that just resonates with me after I read that book, where I was like, okay, anything and everything I do, it's how do I shift into a state of positivity, or a positive state? And if I'm in that, hopefully as a result, as you say, and as an outcome,
Mm.
I will feel
Mm-hmm.
happy.
Yeah.
I'll give you another example. It's like, if someone says to you, "I want to make you happy," what goes through your mind? when someone says that to you? Hey, Fred, I'd like to make you happy. What do you
Yeah,
think?
yeah. Well, I'm thinking about a few different things. Um, Taking the last example story that you gave as well, is it's something about happiness as different levels, and like pleasure and excitement are very temporary form of happiness that comes from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So there are ways other people can make you feel pleasure, or they give you $10,000, and that makes you happy in a sense. But it also puts you on this roller coaster, right? Where first you're happy and then you worry. So people build this kind of roller coaster for you. And, I think that's one of the lessons of Buddhism, right? As long as you're on this roller coaster, you get up in the morning and the sun's shining and it's good. You're happy. And then you can't find your keys and then you're unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you catch the train and then you're happy. And then you miss the bus and then you're unhappy. And then someone gives you $10,000 and then you're happy. And then they tell you what they want you to do for it. And then you're unhappy.
Yeah.
And so on. And that's like about a superficial form of happiness, because it's
Mm-hmm.
related to like pleasure or excitement or some kind of superficial feeling. But I think there's also something, if you've done a lot of things over time to get off the roller coaster, or I don't know, to build your own roller coaster, then you have a deeper sense of contentment and joy. So that's what I'm thinking about. This is a roundabout way to answer your question. Like,
Mm-hmm.
are we talking about pleasure, contentment, joy, or maybe some other form of happiness? I don't know. I haven't thought about it exhaustively, but I very much think that contentment is a very powerful thing to be able to access, to just sit by yourself and look out the window and to say, yeah, things are pretty good. I have a to-do list. I have some problems, but not right now, and I'll deal with them. I've dealt with stuff before. So I'm content with what I have, and I want more, but I'm still content with what I have, to be able to hold both of those things, or to have a joy that springs forth from pride without any external stimulus, without being given $10,000, like laughing when you're by yourself. I think is very, you can think of a joke and you can laugh, right?
Totally. I absolutely love that, man, because you hit it on the head for me. It's all about contentment. I mean,
Mm.
you're right. I love, and again, it's like we just take those three words, keeping it simple: pleasure, contentment, joy. You're right. Pleasure is potentially short-lived. An orgasm, hey, that
Mm.
felt great, short-lived. Joy, you give joy, you experience joy, you share joy, potentially short-lived, or maybe that's a bit more contagious. Goes
Mm-hmm.
further
Mm-hmm.
than pleasure. But contentment, yeah, if you just see someone just sitting on a park bench smiling, you're probably like, that person's a nut job. But
Mm.
who knows? Like, they probably just sitting there admiring something around them in the absence of anything, and they're just internally potentially just feeling like, I feel really good. And
Mm.
when you feel really good from within, I feel like that has the power to just last longer.
Mm.
And I feel like that's kind of like the contentment is that positive state where
Yeah, yeah.
you're able to go ahead.
I think that can actually be true both of contentment and joy.
Okay.
I think you can have just a daily joy, which is contentment is probably easier to relate to, probably more accessible,
Yeah.
but it's one of the ways that I judge spiritual teachers. If
Okay.
someone says, "Hey, I've been doing the spiritual development thing for 20 years, had a lot of insights," maybe it's a roundabout humble way of saying that they're enlightened, this kind of thing. Um, and then they look absolutely bored and devastated and wooden, then I'm like, all right, I don't want that. Take your lessons elsewhere. Whereas if someone, the idea of a jolly Buddha sitting and laughing, and the belly and the shoulders, jumping up and down as they laugh and not very much at all, I think they've tapped into an internal and a universal source of not just contentment, but even joy, that is absolutely contagious, but it's also, its own fire that lights itself.
No, I'm with you on that. I find that interesting because it's like a simple smile versus, like you said, like the shake of the shoulders and the belly and the
Mm,
laughter, and it, like, emanating with like sound and noise,
yeah.
as opposed to just a simple smile. And, you know, I think that, I don't think there's anything wrong with like either wanting to be around that, where you do that joy is contagious, because someone may be a bit more extroverted with that contentment. But there might be someone who's not as extroverted, they're more introverted, and they're content, and they're not one that's kind of disseminating joy, or
Sure.
but at the
Mm,
same time, it's on a scale of 1 to 10, joy, extremely joyful. They're still on the joyful scale, but there's just on the introverted side. And they're
I agree. I agree. It's something like contentment, I think, is related to, there's one part about just feeling enough, and that you
yeah.
have enough and that you are enough. And it can give a sense of like contentment, like there's no hole to fill.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
no ravenous desire to try to go outside to fill a hole. It's like, I'm happy, and now I get to spend my time building something or serving something, out of a place of contentment. You look out the window and you're just like content.
Yeah.
And then joy is something more. If, for example, if people talk about love, I think sometimes when people talk about love, they actually mean joy.
Mm,
That's
okay.
how I look at it. If someone says, uh, the universe is love and love is the most fundamental thing, I'm curious about what the distinction they make between love and joy. And for me, joy is more unified. It's just its own thing, because it also works out grammatically. You say joy, it doesn't work very well in a sentence, or it doesn't need a lot of sentence around it. It's just like joy. There's joy. Whereas with love, I think, I mean, maybe it's the same thing to some extent. Love is about wishing someone well. So it's about a subject and an object. Um, and I love you, or something like that. It's a beautiful thing to say, but it does have that kind of sentence around it. And then there's just joy. It's just joy.
Well, I'm just actually, I had to look this up because I'm kind of curious, because whenever someone says enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
or this is something to enjoy, en is to make, so it's like to make joy, to give joy.
Mm.
Or it's, so what I find interesting about that is I've never thought about that, like in terms of that, so love, enjoy your love, or enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
right, it's like, say I love you, you don't say well, you might say, well, I enjoy your company.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, wait a minute, so does that mean you love me, or what is that a way to, but it's what
Sure.
I,
Yeah.
you know,
It sounds very
it's like,
transactional. It sounds very
exactly. Well,
cheap.
but
Worse than love.
I mean,
I,
exactly.
I love you sounds much better than I enjoy you.
Exactly. I
For
enjoy
sure.
your,
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
it's quite lovely. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
But it's like, I look at love and joy. It's like when you're content, going back to your point there, and I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
misuse it, but it's like, imagine if I fill my cup with a glass of wine, and it's
Mm-hmm.
full, and I see you with an empty cup, and I'm like, oh, Fred, come join me. Let me fill
Mm-hmm.
your glass with wine. It's almost like, I feel like it's like when you're in a positive state, or you feel happy, or you feel content, you're not worried about what's in front of you. You're almost kind of looking around going, how can I help others? How can
Yeah.
I, share, give joy, fill another person's cup, and then like almost, share that contentment, make them.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because one piece of advice a close friend once gave me is, he's like, when you meet someone, ideally you're meeting someone, your partner is someone who is content. They're not
Yeah.
with you because you fill a void, or
Yes.
they fill a void for you, or you're having to constantly give them, fill their cup, and they're not able to fill your cup,
Mm-hmm.
and that's going to end up draining you. And I found that quite powerful, because I'm kind of like, okay, so it is, how do we as human beings feel content? So I know we started this conversation with feeling happy, or happiness, but I think when you're in that position where you are able to be content, I think then you're in that space to give joy, or to share joy, which then I think starts to fill the cups of others around you, and you're able to
Yeah, yeah.
share that.
I agree with that. It's something like, being content is like a platform. It gives you
Mhm.
stability. It's very grounding, and it makes you able it enables you to look around and to start to help other people. It's very difficult to do if you feel you have this hole inside that needs to be filled, or if you look for other people, as you say, I'm not content. How can other people, fill my cup or fill this hole I feel inside? And then you find other people who are looking for the same thing, and that starts to sound like it's disruptive, or some kind of codependent behavior, or something like that could grow out of it. But two content people who are happy can absolutely make each other happier. And when you are content, I think you can start to see bursts of joy that are just like um, spontaneous, or not caused by the outside world. And then it's similar to love. I think a lot of people would use love for that. They feel full of love. They feel full of uh, joy for no particular reason.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's, let me actually take a step back and put a question back to you. When you don't feel content, when you feel, because you're in my opinion, you're a positive person. I mean, even as a coach, you're someone that, but I'm sure you have, like you said, you've been on a roller coaster the last couple of weeks. What is it you do when you lack contentment, when
Mm-hmm.
you feel
I think
empty?
I think the first thing is to notice. It's actually very difficult to notice. We think we are normal, we think we are rational, and then we realize that sometimes we are more emotional than we think. Or a few years ago, when I went through a depression, I didn't realize. I thought I was normal. I thought I was reacting normally and rationally and realistically to the situations around me, and I was approving of my own behavior, uh, because I was used to being in a different place. So I assumed that's where I still was. And then only looking back, I realized like I'd been going through a major dip. Uh, and this is one of the first points, how good are you at that self-assessment? I have some friends who are very keenly aware of like, oh, this week I've been a little bit down. I think it's for these reasons. I'm going to try to change that. And they have some ideas of the curbs and then the ditches that they want to avoid. Oh, I have this tendency towards depression or towards anxiety that I kind of monitor myself. And there's a early warning system that when this happens, then I know that I need to, maybe stop drinking alcohol, or get back into exercise, or take better care of my relationships, or whatever it might be, to curb that behavior and to change the energy and the vibration. That's I think the first step. Um, I also think it's a couple of things in terms of sometimes to lower the expectations I have on a certain day. Like I got vaccinated last week, and then like Thursday was a total write-off, and that's okay. How can I expect so much of myself when I'm like sweating and having flu-like symptoms? And if the people around me could not accept that, it would say something else. But of course they did. And I said like, all right, today I'm not going to do much. And it felt very good. And then the next day I was back, and everything was rosier, and I was feeling better, and I accepted the way I was feeling, and I let it take kind of a natural turn of the wheel. But I did the best I could, to help myself to eat healthy and to sleep well. And I actually took a sleeping pill to go to bed early, and that kind of thing. Yeah, I think that was the right thing to do at that time.
I love that, because to be aware of it, to notice it, to change the vibrations, to lower your own expectations. But what's even better about that is like I know you told people that, but like it's like you didn't say, hey, you've got kids. Hey kids, you know what? Can you expect less of me today? Just because I'm not well. It's more of like you almost had to remind yourself, like, hang on, Fred, like I'm not gonna be able to do much today. So just go easy on yourself, because if you're Mr. Overachiever today with the absence of the energy that you need, you're gonna go into negative. You're gonna go into
Mm.
the
Yeah.
I,
It's like
I
what you mentioned before about taking the temperature with other people,
yeah,
checking in with them is a really good practice. I really liked what you said about that before we started. And to do the same thing with oneself, to say, where am I today? What are we going to do? And to take it both ways. Today I'm going to take it easy. I got vaccinated yesterday or something like that. And on the other days, like, look, today there are no excuses. Let's not make any excuses to not do the things that are difficult, because there is no end to that. So now is the day to toughen up and to
JFDI,
set
just
a
fucking do it.
personal best and to just go for it.
No, I love that. There was a podcast I listened to from Brené Brown and Tim Ferriss, and she talks about how people say a healthy marriage is 50-50. And she's like, find me a couple who actually do have 50-50. And she went on to kind of explain, like, there'll be a week where she will feel 30 and her husband will feel 50. So that combined they're 80. So if they want to get to
Hmm.
100 together, either he needs to up the notch, he needs to get up to 70. So she's at 30, so they're at 100, or they need to like take the pressure off themselves and in order to get to 100%. But what I loved about that, it's a bit of an equation where, but if you're one person and you're thinking, okay, today I'm at 60%. Okay, that means I'm not gonna be able to do 100% of everything I normally do on a day like today. I may not be able to go for that 5K run, 10K run. I may not be able to meet up with those people. I may not. And I think it's
Hmm.
knowing that, because again, suddenly then you're not letting yourself down.
Hmm.
You're more content, and therefore you're able to shift into a positive state of mind. And that positive state of mind then will hopefully eventually get to that outcome, as we said, of feeling happy,
Yes.
and then being able to give joy or experience joy or feel joy. In the last couple of weeks, I mentioned I'm also been in a bit of a tough spot, and up until last week, I was like, blimey, this is something I'm just not going to want to do, and wanted to make a few phone calls, and I was like, nope, stop, like just pause. So again, like you said, noticing it, being aware of
Hmm.
it. Okay, I said, okay, I need to change my vibration, my energy. Otherwise, I'm going to do the wrong thing on the back of being emotional rather than being clear, being measured. So I ended up, I did lower my expectations. Fortunately, I had a day off, so it made it easier that I didn't have to like get onto emails and run the mental batteries. I ended up actually jotting my thoughts down and going, okay, so in order for me to feel, or in order for me to get to, and something we even said again before we started recording, something Joe Dispenza says is, when the emotion clears, you're left with wisdom. And it's like that wisdom that's on paper. If I read emotion on paper, I can go, thank God I didn't act on that. Or if I read reason
Hmm.
on paper, I'm like, okay, I need to act on that. And but coupled with good food, meditation, exercise, sleep, you've got those fundamentals. Ideally, okay, maybe you don't do the exercise, but you eat well, you meditate, and you sleep to give your body that chance to recover. I think is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, you'll end up doing something that might dig you a bigger hole
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
create a
Yeah.
bigger void.
So the summary of that for me, like the source of some confusion seems to be that being happy is not, a simple task. It's not like you do one thing and that's going to make you constantly happy. It's, of course, not that simple. And at the same time, there are definitely things you can do to prepare the ground and to sow the seeds and to create the environment, the external environment and the internal environment for happiness. And you can have, saying the latter is not oversimplifying, right? So some people say, yeah, happiness is not a good goal, or if you just watch TV and eat pizza, you'd go get tired of it, or I tried to become happy by buying all the cars, and it's like, well, yeah, but that just shows a lack of imagination, or the wrong model of happiness. It doesn't disqualify the idea of happiness. I think we know. I think we know what we should be doing, not to self-sabotage, to actually self-monitor and to do some things that we think, yeah, this is going to make me feel good long term. This is going to make me more content, maybe, and more ambitious, and feel more joy and be a more loving person and be able to have a good relationship. And we know what those things are. And it's complex, but it's not overly complicated. It's not like we don't know.
No, I'm actually excited for you to when you eventually listen to Art of Happiness. I'm going to go back to your point on saying, like, being happy is not a simple task. My I'm going to say it this way more. What I interpreted from what I listened to is it's actually a very simple task.
Mm,
Feeling happy is actually very simple. And what he and the reason why is, it's like, if you think of a kid, um, they they don't have moments where they're upset. Like, sorry, as in, like, they either cry or they're laughing
mm-hmm.
because they're hungry, or they need to change a diaper, or so, kind of what his thesis is, like, again, like, or his point is, like, people come into the world um positive,
Mm-hmm.
and it's things that they encounter, whether it's how they're raised, their environment, their struggles, their challenges, whether they're privileged, not privileged, that
Yeah.
will then shape them to being more positive or more negative or balanced, whatever.
Mm,
And so what he's kind of saying is, like, look, like, being happy or feeling happy can be actually very simple. It's how
right.
do you remove the complexity around you, which is why I think when you said the follow-up, which is, we create, if we can create the environment for happiness, life is better.
Mm-hmm.
Life can be
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
Like, it can be simple. And I think, you
Right.
know,
Right.
it's something, again, we also chatted about before we started recording. It's like knowing your why. Like, why,
Mm-hmm.
if I buy a car, I have a buddy of mine, love the guy. He's one of the most energetic, positive individuals I've ever met. And he showed me a picture of him in 1983, 84, looking at a Ferrari.
Mm,
And then he's like, now look at this. He bought himself a brand new Ferrari, a
mm.
couple weeks back. And he earned it. Like,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
worked hard. He talked to his wife, his kid, like, and then now because it's a true joy for him. Like, he
Mm-hmm.
loves cars. Like, it's his joy. And so, if I ask him, are you happy that you bought that car? Heck yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why? He's like, because it's been my childhood dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So that car will be a source of happiness and joy for him, and he'll be able to share that with others. He's going to hopefully let me, ride in it, not drive it, ride in it one day. Want that would be too much pressure. Talk about handing someone a check for 10 grand, the keys to a
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
150 plus grand Ferrari. But again, why am I saying this? I think my point is, I think it's our responsibility to being, as you said, aware and finding our own approach to understanding our why and
Mm-hmm.
simplifying the task of feeling happy or being in a
Mm-hmm.
positive state of mind,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that a negative mindset will literally wipe you out. And I
Mm-hmm.
always use my fake math. Like, it'll take 4 to 7 happy moments to offset that one negative moment, or
Mm-hmm.
that state of
Yeah. Yeah.
negativity.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but it's
So,
just, yeah, go ahead.
uh, coming back to one of the first things you said there was, and I think this is basically debated within the different schools of Buddhism, right? It's like, is the road to enlightenment very long and could take several lifetimes, and you pound away at it and make little progress, but you probably never get there? Or is it available? Is it all available for you right now in this moment? And so I think that's something that's debated, and in a sense it's both, right?
Mhm.
Which
Mhm.
is the way some people express it, like being there while getting there. So
Yes.
I do like the sentiment of this, both contentment and joy. I
Mhm.
think they're absolutely available right now, and I don't think you have to do anything. So I agree, but it's also true that you can create your personal hell. If you are in debt, if you've borrowed money from your friends and insulted them and made it their fault, and not forgiven your parents for whatever you perceive they did wrong when you were growing up, and uh, you know you can go on for as long as you want. If you create all these bad circumstances in your life, all this bad karma in a sense, it will be very difficult. And if someone says, hey, it's all available, the contentment and joy is right there, you don't have to change anything, I think that's basically wrong.
Mm.
So you have to do both. You have to clean your house, you have to have good relationships, and do some spiritual work. It's very difficult if your body is in constant pain to be happy. Again, if someone says, oh, happiness and contentment are right there, your keys were in your pocket all along. uh, it doesn't work because the body is in too much pain. Um, but at the same time, we know of these cases and the people who said they were in a big accident and they became happy, or uh, the cancer was the best thing that happened to them, something like that, right? And objectively, it isn't, but it helped them to find something. It helped them to let go. And then they found that it was true, that the contentment and joy were available in every moment, despite of the external circumstances, which sounds a bit odd. And that brings me to the point about attachment. I think if someone buys a Ferrari, absolutely, it's totally reconcilable with, being rich and successful and happy and all these things. Absolutely possible. And I think the thing you want to look out for there is the attachment, right? If someone is losing sleep about the idea of the car getting stolen or damaged or something like that, then maybe they're a bit too attached. I don't want to give anyone advice, but for example, recently I gave away a lot of my favorite things.
Mhm.
They were small things, but I wanted to check that, like, these are my favorite things. I'm going to give them away to make sure that I wasn't getting attached to things. I know I can, yeah, they're my favorite things. Next year I will have other favorite things, and to let someone else enjoy them for a while. A friend of mine has a jacket I really like, and I actually asked him if I could have it, and he gave it to me. So it's an interesting game of giving and taking your favorite things. So if you had a Ferrari, maybe I would encourage you to let your friend drive it, because it would give them a lot of pleasure,
Yeah.
and it would let you check that you weren't getting too attached to your things.
I think that's brilliant. I think, it's almost like, again, and it's funny that word attachment, because it's like that ball and chain. If it becomes a weight that you're having to carry around, you're absolutely right, mate. It's going to it's going to drain you. It's going to deplete you, and you're not going to feel content. You're not going to be able to feel joy. You're not going to be able to share. You're not going to feel happy. Um, and I love how you said you have to clean your house. You have to do the work, and it's, again, one of my favorite quotes from Art of Happiness is, if your motivation is genuine, and again, genuine motivation comes from within,
Hmm.
and it comes from having clarity. It comes from having, knowing, okay, where do I want to be? Where do I want to go? And how do I want to do it? And
Mm.
we chat about the previous podcast I did on, fitness and vanity and things that are short lived. You know, I I'm someone who just personally believes that, like, it's wrong to get attached to things. And when you are able to, I look at I'm jumping here, I look at my father and my uncle. Like, they gave so much, they've made so much, they lost so much, but they've given so much away. And I think it's just, when you're able to do that. I was in a cab ride yesterday, and I was speaking to the guy, and he was telling me how, he made a deal with someone to drive them for 200 pounds for the day. And he was waiting for the guy. The guy eventually said, "Can you come pick up my shopping bags?" Realized that this guy bought a shirt for 200 pounds, shoes for 2,000 pounds, like, just whatever. They dropped like 20 grand on shopping. They got back home, and he was like, "Hey, so how much do I owe you?" And he's like, 200. He's like, "Can we do 150? Like, please, come on, mate. Can we do 150?" And, I mean, I was shocked to hear this story. I'm like, this guy, clearly that 50 pounds won't make a difference for him, but it'll make a massive difference for the taxi driver. The taxi driver's like,
Mm.
"Fine, just give me the 150 and I'll be on my way."
Mm.
And it blew my mind, because I'm kind of like, it's not that the guy had the ability to afford it, but he didn't have the respect. He didn't have he was attached to that 50 pounds for some reason. And it's
Hmm.
like, dude, really? Like, that's not going to change your life, but it's going to change someone else's life. So how do we find the balance? Because I think something we always talk about is balance, right? You
Hmm.
know, knowing when we're feeling empty and we can give, and knowing when we're
Yeah.
feeling empty and we can't.
Hmm.
Um, and just
Yeah.
being
I like
aware.
what you said about the genuine motivation as well. It's again like we introspect, or we're aware of what's going on. So
Mhm.
someone is willing to spend 200 pounds to give themselves, maybe, and I'm, making this up, but like social status, but they're not willing to give 200 pounds to make someone else's day better.
Exactly.
It's weird, right? And it's the
It-
same with a Ferrari. If you have a Ferrari and you sit in it, and it gives you an appreciation of craftsmanship, of human ingenuity, if it brings you back to your childhood and the first dreams you had about what life could be, and it gives you a healthy connection to achievement and reward and celebration, it's a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you drive around and you're like, "Ah, people aren't really looking at me. I thought more people would look," then, maybe that's what would make me question my motivation. Like, oh shit, why did I do this? What am I doing?
No, exactly. And it's going back to how we motivate, how we understand our own why, how we know ourselves in order to then, are we content? Are we in the position to share the joy,
Hmm.
create joy? I think it's really important in order for us to feel happy. So, like you said earlier, someone can be a multi-billionaire and be
Mm.
happy. It's like they're not in it for the money.
Hmm.
Hey, they're rich on the back of doing whatever they're doing that makes them happy or helps them be happy, and they're able to make money off it. Hey, best
Hmm.
combination. Um, and there are some people who are happy not making any money, being broke, or being, not having, but they're
Hmm.
happy because they're not pressured into doing things that they don't want to do by somebody else. So it's this. I think that's why it goes back to, it's to each their own, right?
Mm.
Like, we all as
Yeah,
human
yeah,
beings
yeah.
want everyone to feel happy, to be content, but it will vary by person depending
Mm.
on who they are and what they want and why
Yeah,
they want
yeah.
it.
I believe, you mentioned it a couple of times. I think the original Nietzsche quote is, "A man who's found his why can endure almost any how." Uh, and I'm gonna go with Nietzsche. And
I
I
love
think
it.
that's right. And it's about, the modern way to put it is like find your why, or embrace the struggle, right? So if you're going for something, if you have a purpose and a motivation that you believe in, then some discomfort along the way is not off-putting, right? Because it's put in the context of it's making you stronger and it's getting you closer to a goal.
I agree.
And I think that's really, I would say that's about half the story. And it's about that balance between those two particular things. So, finding your why and a purpose, it's about having goals, it's about becoming something. It's about, as we said, you have to do some work to prepare the ground for success or something else. And then there is the other side of it, which is contentment is available right now. And that doesn't even require a why.
Mm-hmm. It's just within. You have to be
Yes.
aware. You have to notice
Hmm.
it. It's funny you
Yeah.
should say success, because I always asked. I remember back in college, I had the question to a few friends. I'm like, "What is success to you?" And it varies. And some people might go, "Oh, being a Harvard MBA grad, going and working for a investment bank, banking the 7-digit bonus, blah blah. That's success." And it might be for another. It might just be, "Hey, a wife, husband, 2 kids, 1 kid, a dog, white picket fence, question mark." Like, that's
Hmm.
success to me. So I think that's why, the outcome of that, of your own
Mm.
motivations can vary, in the definitions can therefore be different. But it's ironic. Hey, but at the end of the day, I think being content, being joyful, being happy, it's as basic as it gets.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't need different definitions. It
Mm.
doesn't need different
Yeah. And it
materials in order
seems
to
to
highlight
me that everyone wants a combination of happiness and success. Everyone wants a combination of the just uncaused contentment and the joy, sorry, and the success or maybe joy of setting and achieving goals.
it. Mm-hmm.
I think it's very rare to not genuinely want both, in the sense that some people say, "Oh, I'm happy with anything. I don't need anything." If that's genuinely true, fantastic, of course. Again, like happiness is happiness. If you say you're happy and you are without anything, fantastic. But sometimes it's not true. Sometimes it leads to bitterness and the idea of like unfulfilled potential and things like that. And at the other end of the spectrum, some people say, it's all about the struggle and happiness is, for poor people and, something like that. and they're just trying to fill a hole and justify a chase, when in fact, maybe the type of happiness that is contentment would give balance. And that's where I've ended up, that most people want both, some element of uncaused happiness and some element of achievement and success.
Well, in that case, I would go back to like, know your definition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because
Exactly.
if I'm someone who's like, oh, well, so-and-so is married to a model and so-and-so has a 10-bedroom house and has, drives a Maserati, Ferrari, and I want that. That's not
Mm-hmm.
my definition of happiness. As in, like, that's
Mm-hmm.
not my fulfillment. Like, that's what they've got. That's what they've done. So as soon as I'm looking outwards, not inwards, I've lost the plot. I'm never going to be happy because I'm going to be constantly chasing someone else's dream.
Yeah.
And that's not what we want. Like that.
I think that's true. We're a little bit too good at taking those signals. We're kind of probably evolutionarily trained to look at other people and what they're doing and take cues from it to fit in and to create a society and to learn. And to some extent that's good, but we certainly don't want to take it too far, because we become like machines in terms of just like copying other people. And if we copy other people who are unhappy, it's not going to lead us to a good place.
No, I agree, man. And that's, I think that's really important. And I just feel like social media these days, especially for folks in their tweens, maybe early 30s, like, who aren't thoroughly established. Hey, even folks in their 40s, let's not put age on it. Any you get on social media and so is vacationing in, or just got their second jab, or they got their new house, or they just got married, or their new port, because let's be honest, like, social media is a platform where it's, look at me, look at what I'm doing. Now, someone can have the motivation of like, I want to share this with friends and family of like how happy I am and stuff. But some others can probably read that and go, okay, like, is this a joke? Like, what the, like, and I think it's just, I find it quite interesting because we live in a very materialistic, I brought this up, I think, with either yourself or Indra. So how do we find the right, just look within, like, okay, that's great what's happening outside. It's great what others are doing. I'm grateful, happy for you. Well, what does that mean? And what does that do to you? So you don't put that extra pressure on yourself thinking, is that happiness? Like, really understand. And that's why I love that book, The Art of Happiness. Like, understand, like, why.
Yeah. I like that. It sounds like the things that we're coming back to is like, look inside, find a genuine motivation, and then execute it with balance. So those three things, from like starting within and then building the external things from the genuine motivation, I think, is a good leverage to go in the right direction. And if you're going in the right direction, it doesn't matter how fast you're going. It'll be a better journey. And then to find balance within that. If someone claims to be happily achievement oriented, but cannot sit still with their eyes closed for 10 minutes, it's strange. Similarly, if someone claims to be very content, but couldn't, even if they needed to, put in 4 hours of solid work, it's also strange.
I totally agree with that. I think that, just to kind of recap, I think you just hit it. Look within, create and understand that genuine motivation, and build it on the outside and see where it takes you at whatever pace it does. It can be slow.
Yeah.
It can be fast.
I think that's the summary.
Love it. Fred, I love this, man. I miss this. Good catching up with you, brother.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Hey, I'll catch up with you soon. Take care, buddy.
Take care. Thank you.